Hello. So, following on from what we were talking about in this morning's lesson, I just wanted to sort of record a few tips and demonstrations with regards to the improvisation for the grade 3 exam. And we have company here, so making sure that we do everything properly. So, hello, Percy. Good boy, good boy, good boy. Right. So, the example that we looked at in the lesson from one of Trinity's actual exams is typical of exactly how what they call the harmonic improvisation will look like in the exam. There are three ways you can do the improvisation, but we're looking very specifically at one of them. And I'll make that clear on your form so they'll know exactly which one you're doing. You don't need to worry about anything like that. And what that essentially means is that you're given chords you're given chords and a particular key, a particular scale, and it's up to you to build something with that. It's up to you how fast it goes. It's up to you how many beats there are in a bar, or you've got total freedom, which in a way is good. In a way that can be a little bit kind of scary because too much freedom can sort of, leave you wondering what to do. So this video is just to give you a few sort of solid ideas of how you can make your improvisation really good. So as we went through on that sheet that I've written out and printed for you, you'll know as soon as you see the excerpt what key it's in, just from the key signature. So no sharps or flats. C major, it's just going to be all right keys. One flat is going to be the key of F major. So both your chords and your tune are going to have all the B's flattened in. Or it could be G major, in which case there'll be a single sharp in the key signature, as you know from your G major key signature. So that's the first thing. It will always be 4 bars long with one chord and only one chord in each bar. And there will be repeat marks at the end. So that's really, really important to remember that what you play has to be 8 bars long. You basically do what you're shown twice. So in the example that we looked at from a previous Trinity exam, it was in the key of F major. So there was a flat sign at the beginning. The chords were F, followed by, I think, G minor, followed by C, followed by F again. And then it would loop round, it would be the same thing for the next 4 bars. Now, it's totally up to you how you do those. You can do the chords in the right hand if you want, but I would suggest keep it simple. What you're being assessed on here isn't that you can sort of play a million notes a second and do fancy arpeggios up and down the piano. What you're being assessed on is how musical and creative and pleasing to listen to what you create is. It's not about being fancy, it's about being good counting, all these things we'll talk about. So the formula I suggest you follow is play the chords with your left hand and make up a tune using the scale with your right hand. But the exercise I want you to try, we'll do this with the chords in F major, is start with your right hand just on the first 5 notes of the scale. Because you don't really need to use many more than that. You don't need to kind of jump all over the piano. And actually most tunes don't. If you think of most melodies that you've sung, they don't you don't sort of move all over the place. So just using those first 5 notes of the scale. And in the left hand, I'm going to play the chords. And remember what we talked about in the lesson where we had a couple of sentences to use as rhythms, just to give you a solid sense of timing and a solid sense of interesting rhythm. So they were sizzling sausages, and the other one I can remember the rhythm, I can't remember the words. It was something you came up with, something to do with turnips. So I'm going to assume it was something like all my turnips turn to bacon. It wasn't that, but let's just use that because it's a fun sentence anyway. So you've got sizzling sausages, and you've got all my turnips turn to bacon. Da 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 da. Now what I'm going to do for the 8 bars of the improvisation, I'm going to mix up those two quite randomly. It might be a bit boring if you do sizzling sausages, then turnips, then sizzling sausages, then turnips, blah, blah, blah. That might be a bit dull. So I'm just going to kind of make it up a little bit randomly as I go along. It is an improvisation after all. And I'm just going to use the first 5 notes of the scale on top of the chords. Sizzling sausages, all my turnips turn to bacon. Sizzling sausages, all my turnips turn to bacon. Sizzling sausages, sizzling sausages, all my turnips turn to bacon. example. Really, really, really important point as well. To make it sound finished at the end, I would always end your tune on the note whose key it is. So if you're in F major, end on an F. If you're in C major, end on a C, and so forth. It just makes it sound nicely sort of wrapped up and finish. Couple of other things you can do to make it much richer, much more musical. Things like dynamics, really, really, really important. So what I suggest you do, because this tends to work really, really nicely, throughout the first 4 bars get louder, throughout the second 4 bars get quieter, and in the last bar or two, if you subtly slow down as well, that will sound really nice and really musical. So the only difference I'm going to make now, so you might have noticed also when I was doing that, I was using sort of repeating patterns of something like all my turnips turn to bacon. Those are just runs of 4 notes going down, but starting on a different note each time. And having patterns like that in your improvisation is brilliant because it glues the whole thing together. It doesn't have to be fancy. And remember, the simpler the better, because most catchy tunes, whether they're pop songs or classical music or musical theatre or whatever, most of the catchiest things are really simple, little melodies that just kind of walk up or down a scale. So yeah, I'm going to do that, what I said with the dynamics this time. Might use a little bit of pedal. Remember, just as long as you change the pedal every time you change the chord, that will sound nice. I'm also going to throw in another ingredient, and that's articulation. So I'm going to have most of it legato, smooth, but I'm going to make a little bit of it deliberately the other way, staccato. So here goes. I'll start with the turnips this time. My turnips turn to bacon, sizzling sausages. My turnips turn to bacon, sizzling sausages. Sizzling sausages. My turnips turn to bacon, sizzling sausages. Even the dog's looking at me as if I'm mad. So, just to sum up, knowing the chords is obviously crucial, because if your left hand can just go to those chords really easily, the left hand's sorted. With the right hand, it's better to just stick to walking up and down the scale with a few, you can have a few sort of skips. That sounds really, really, really good. But as I say, most melodies do just sort of walk up and down the scale. If in doubt, do something simple that sounds good rather than something sort of, a bit more kind of adventurous that you're not comfortable with. Dynamics really important, getting louder, getting quieter. Mix up the articulation a bit, have some of it staccato. If you use those rhythms, and the good thing is you can use those rhythms in the exam because it won't tell you how many beats there have to be in a bar or anything. So with the sizzling sausages and the turnips, I'd say it's in 4/4. Sizzling sausages, or all my turnips turn to bacon, or something like that. I don't know where I got the bacon bit from, I must be hungry. So those are the main sort of bits. Now here's a couple of extra ideas if you want to really sort of push it to the next level. A couple of extra ideas to be even more sort of creative. One, with the left hand, there are 2 things that, well, there are hundreds of things you can do, but 2 specific things I want to point out that can make it sound even more awesome. One, play your chords, or some of your chords, as broken chords. So it doesn't have to be that if it's an F major chord. It can be... That's a little bit trickier, but have a go. Sizzling sausages, rather than sizzling sausages. For example. So all I was doing there was more or less the same as I did in the demonstration earlier, but with each chord broken rather than solid. That one's a little bit more tricky. You don't have to do that, but it's worth playing around, because if you find you can do that, or do that for some bits, all the better. That will sound really, really cool. Another one, and this is really, really useful, is what's called inversion. Inversion is where you basically jumble the notes up of a chord, but you still play the required notes. So for example, on the F chord, F, A, C, there's nothing to say you have to play them in that order. You can go A, C, F, and it's still the same chord, just jumbled up. Think the chords are like fruit salads. They're like a fruit salad with 3 ingredients. It doesn't really matter what order you throw those ingredients into the bowl. It's all going to be mixed up in the sound anyway. So as long as you've got F, A and C, it will be an F major chord. As long as you've got G, B flat and D, it will be a G minor chord, and so on and so forth. So having some of the chords in an inversion is really smart. For example, with the one we were looking at, if you're going from an F chord to a G minor chord, that's a nice simple movement. But then to get to the C chord, a bit of move the camera here, you could jump all the way from there to there, or you could be lazier and keep the G where it is and just go there. So you've got all the notes you want. And actually that sounds really good. That sounds really smooth. So like I said, these are more advanced things, but just if you've got time and want to have a play with them, these can be really fun and you can come up with some really cool things. So broken chords, inversion, jumping up the notes of the chord, you can do both. A third idea, and this I think works quite well if you do this on the second 4 bars, so on the repeat, is move your right hand up an octave. So if you first bit someone that just makes it suddenly more interesting because the ear goes, oh, something's changed when it jumps up the octave. You've got 88 keys to play with. I would keep most of your improvisation to sort of these middle 3 octaves or so. But there's nothing to say you can't move your right hand up an octave or even 2 octaves for part of it. Or you could do something really nice at the end. So when it ends on, say, if it's in the key of F, ending on the F chord, play a really high F afterwards, or indeed a really low one. That sounds really nice with the pedal down because it just mixes everything together. So putting all those ingredients together, I'm going to do one last demonstration with added sound effects with the words. So broken chords, solid chords, dynamics, all the ingredients in there. Sizzling sausages, more to I'm going to call that bacon, sausage and turnip, the most weird sounding breakfast I've ever heard of. Any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch, but hopefully this will give you a few ideas and a few good pointers for the improvisation. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Have a good one. Bye.